Aloha and welcome to the fourth and final part of our funkadelic journey through the history of funk with our funk specialists Kamenica Reaper. Today we will be looking at the years 1975 until now. I will be using as my weapon of choice for this learn and burn session a delicious pear schnapps, a liquor brewed with Carolina Reaper chilies by Kamenica Reaper, and Kamenica Reaper's classic #5 hot sauce, also made with the Carolina Reaper. Our friends over at Kamenica will be using as well their #5 Reaper sauce, plus their evil but delicious Trinidad Maruga Scorpion Caribbean sauce. Here we go. Let's get funky.
Now, I must ask you, the next submission that my boy here told me that he would like in our history, he told me was Hernie Hancock.
No,
However, I'm guessing it's Herbie Hancock. And here we have Herbie Hancock's classic Spider, 1976. Tell him what it is, tell him why it's in the history of funk.
It's my favorite song of Herbie Hancock, and he has a fuckload of albums released, and my father told me about the concerts of Herbie Hancock that he visited. I think he's one of the most influential musicians in this genre, and I'm particularly not saying funk, as he's just so much more than just funk. I would call him a jazz, soul, funk musician, because he provides everything.
That sounded like the beginning of a Fatboy Slim tune. Jazz, funk, brother, check it out now. The funk soul, brother, check it out now. And actually, when we get to that weird remixy kind of stuff, I have to ask you. Now, I live in Germany. I'm British. I'm as British as I often say, fish and chips and incest. But I live in Germany. It's very nice. The Germans are very kind to me, and I'm very happy to live here. And I particularly love uncovering German culture that didn't drift into English-speaking culture. And there is a wonderful German rap band, which is pretty much unknown to the rest of you out there, who come from the English-speaking world, called the Fantastic Four or the Fantastische Vier. And I'm quite surprised now, because on our History of Funk list, at 1978, around about when I was born, we have the Fantastic Four, Bring Your Own Funk. But I'm guessing it's not the German band. Am I right?
No, it's not the Germans. It's a disco music group, as I remember right, from New York, or at least the label was in New York. And there was it's a nice disco groove. That's pretty much why I brought it. And for in 78, 77, 78, and I think that Studio 54 was funded in 77. That is that time, and that is the sound of exactly that time.
To put this in a context for those of you in the world who don't know your music history too well in combination with global history, in that same time, 77, 78, we were experiencing in Britain, for example, rubbish strikes and the 4-day week where you only had electricity for 4 days a week. And in Germany, they closed the motorways on Sundays. There was no driving on the motorways. People took their roller skates to the motorways in order to save petrol, gas, and electricity. And somehow in another part of the world, there was a funk explosion happening. Very strange how these things happen parallel to each other.
No, it out of poverty as well. hip hop as had the same development. It even developed around that time as well.
Yeah, but
Out of
you're exactly right. I mean, if you look at hip hop, you've got your first real hip hop record being Gil Scott-Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, and then followed by In the Bottle, which I think was 72 or 74, but I could be wrong about that. But if you
no,
look
I
how,
wouldn't exactly call it hip hop or rap music.
well,
Because it
I
was
mean,
more spoken words. It was
I guess
completely
you might be
different.
right there. I don't know. I see Gil Scott-Heron. If you don't know Gil Scott-Heron, you have to check out his music. I see Gil Scott-Heron, to my mind, particularly The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, as being a kind of progenitor of modern hip hop music that popped up with
Certainly,
ghetto blasters in the
certainly.
early 80s. In my feeling. And how we responded to that in Britain that particular time was we produced the Sex Pistols and punk music. And in the States, of course, leading up to that time, they also produced punk, proto-punk, with groups like the New York Dolls. So it's interesting that these things all happened in parallel with each other. And still in 78, we moved to our next step in the history of funk, the Commodores.
Yeah, well, which is I took some more earlier Commodores song, but they had their heydays in the 80s, clearly, and but I'm not a big fan of the funk and the disco of the 80s. I am, and I listen to the stuff, but the 70s stuff is for me clearly the more interesting, just because I think it's more danceable.
Yeah. So if they're looking to dance, you'd point the people to the funk of the 70s then, yeah?
Yeah, clearly.
Absolutely.
Like with real drums and with horns and like with a brass section and not so many synthesizers.
Well, 79, we're now jumping to our next hit on the history of funk. We got Curtis. How can I tell her? Yeah, tell us about this particular track.
This disco music song, 120 beats per minute, completely danceable, which is also the next song, which I want to introduce, which is for me the greatest disco music song of all times.
When You Touch Me.
When You Touch Me with Taana Gardner. Her other favorite song is Heartbeat, and it was sampled for the Hot Stepper, what's his face, Ini Kamosi. Ini Kamosi, yeah. He sampled that song, and that's why Taana Gardner is for me absolute underground disco queen. Great voice, and the tunes going so forward. And she was on the West End Records label, which was ironically situated like in this 2 or 3 blocks away from the Studio 54, which was in the very same road. But it was owned by I can't remember his name, and he one of the co-owners of the other club, of the Paradise Garage. So that was that scene, and West End Records was clearly one of the most important disco labels in New York, in the world, actually.
There you go. Now, our boy up there is about to take us into the 80s, and it's a surprise for me. He takes us into the 80s with a song from 1982, Freedom of Choice by, and I'm surprised to see this here, Earth, Wind and Fire. Please explain.
Of course. Earth, Wind and Fire, probably the most, the biggest group of all the groups here, and the most important funk group of the 80s. But as I said, I had to take at least one 80s song, and it's not so... Sorry.
That's okay. Slowly. You're doing a great job.
Burnt my tongue with my own sauce.
Dude, it's the story of my life. I am continuously damaging myself with something I've personally produced. It's the definition of masochism. I hurt myself to produce it, then I hurt myself with it after I've produced it. It's a joy. It's a joy.
Yeah.
Talking of joys, you've jumped 20 years. No, longer, actually. 30.
Way longer. Yes.
82 until 2011.
I actually picked two songs, not from the past, just to show there is very good funk music still produced. Yeah, and I found that South of the Counts, which I didn't know the band. I got the record, but I actually didn't know the band.
Of Lies by the Counts, produced in 2011. And so this is modern funk.
Modern funk, but clearly with traditional funk drums. Yeah.
Poor boy. Well, before my boy there melts, let's bring us to the last step on our evolution of funkiness. Yeah. And that would be, and I'm happy to see this name, Chaka Khan. Can't beat the feeling of Chaka Khan. Like Sugar, 2019. Give the boys and girls a little idea of what this is.
Yeah. Well, Chaka Khan is, she was, wasn't her, she had a nickname, I think, the Queen of Funk, I think. And she still is, as she has released an album in 2019. And it was not like the old Chaka Khan and Rufus stuff. It was a modern version of Chaka Khan, which she is now, and it's more electronic, but modern, yes, and still very Chaka Khan. And yeah, I love to play that song as it's really a good break.
Chaka Khan. Chaka Khan. Now,
Chaka Khan, let me rock you.
Girls, there you go. From the early 70s until today, that is your playlist. And there you can hear the development of funk. We will be, of course, giving you a few lists to have a look at so that you can make some notes in our credits. However, I'm dying slowly. I don't know about you, but my stomach doesn't feel so great. So I think it's about time for us to go and, probably occupy toilets for a couple of hours. So I'd say from my funky buddy up there and from me, of course, a whole heap of funk down here in Bavaria. Both of us would like to say, enjoy your funk, keep funky. You are Rick James, bitch. And ciao for now.
Peace.
As recommended by our expert, who is slowly melting, and I am as well. Just to put this in a context, we're having a very big heat wave in Europe right now. I don't know where you're listening. You could be in Australia. You could be in London. I don't know where you are. But I tell you one thing for sure. It's fucking not the right weather to be eating a bunch of chili in Europe at the moment. But we're doing a good job. Aren't we, Willie?
We are, definitely, yes.
We're making funk proud of us.